My son's name was Raven. Even saying his name now feels like touching something fragile. He was not just my child, he was my routine, my laughter, my reason to wake up early even on tired days. From the time he learned to walk, he followed me everywhere, holding the edge of my scarf, afraid I might disappear. Raven had a way of making ordinary moments feel important. Morning tea was never just tea. He would sit across from me, asking questions about things he already knew, just to hear my voice. When he smiled, his eyes curved slightly, like he was always hiding a secret joy. I used to think I would never forget that smile. The day of the accident started like any other. He was running late, tying his shoes in a hurry. I told him to slow down. Mothers always say that, thinking it might protect their children from the world. He laughed, kissed my forehead, and said, "I'll be back by evening. Save dinner for me." I remember standing at the door long after he left, watching the street as if my eyes could follow him the whole way. They came to my house before sunset. Two strangers. Soft voices. Words that didn't make sense together. Accident. Immediate. Couldn't save him. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat down because my legs forgot how to hold me. Somewhere deep inside, I waited for Raven to walk in and complain about how dramatic everyone was being. That night, I set an extra plate on the table. Not because I was in denial, but because my hands remembered him better than my mind did. The days after blurred into each other. People came, spoke gently, touched my shoulders, told me I was strong. I nodded because that's what mothers do when they don't have words left. At night, the house became too quiet. Silence pressed against my ears until it hurt. Then, one evening, I heard his footsteps. I was standing in the kitchen when I heard the familiar rhythm, slightly uneven, like he was dragging one foot. My heart skipped, but my body stayed calm, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. "Raven?" I said softly. He was sitting on the couch, exactly where he used to sit. Same hoodie. Same careless posture. He looked up at me and smiled. Not a ghostly smile. A real one. Warm. Familiar. "You didn't eat," he said, pointing at my plate. I sat across from him without thinking. We talked. About nothing important. About the weather. About how boring the house felt without noise. I didn't ask how he was alive. He didn't ask why I wasn't surprised. When I went to bed that night, I slept peacefully for the first time since the accident. The next morning, the couch was empty. At first, I thought it was a dream. But then it happened again. And again. Sometimes he appeared when I was cooking. Sometimes when I was folding laundry. He never scared me. He never mentioned the accident. People would ask if I was okay. I would smile and say yes, because in those moments, I truly was. What they didn't know was that my mind had found a way to keep my son alive, even if my heart knew the truth. As days passed, Raven became part of my routine again, only this time, quietly. He appeared in moments when my loneliness felt heaviest. When I poured tea for two out of habit, he would raise an eyebrow and tease, "You still make it too strong." I would laugh, then freeze, realizing I had laughed alone. I didn't tell anyone. Not because I was afraid they wouldn't believe me, but because I was afraid they would take him away with words like grief and healing. Raven felt real to me. His voice didn't echo. His presence didn't fade when I looked directly at him. He felt like memory learning how to breathe. Sometimes, he would sit beside me in the evenings, watching the street through the window. We didn't always talk. Silence had never been uncomfortable between us. Even when he was alive, we understood each other without words. That bond hadn't broken. It had only changed shape. But there were moments when the illusion cracked. Like when I cooked his favorite meal and waited too long, only to find the food cold and untouched. Or when I heard laughter that stopped the second I turned around. Those moments left me hollow, unsure whether to hold on tighter or let go. One afternoon, I heard a knock at the door while Raven was sitting across from me. I opened it to find a neighbor asking if I needed anything. When I turned back, the chair was empty. I closed the door slowly, pressing my back against it, sliding down until I was on the floor. My chest ached, not from fear, but from knowing that my mind was protecting me the only way it knew how. That night, Raven didn't appear. I waited. I spoke his name out loud. The silence answered me instead. The absence hurt more than his death ever had. I realized then that my hallucinations weren't madness, they were mercy. A bridge my heart built so I wouldn't have to fall all at once. The next time Raven appeared, he looked different. Softer. Quieter. He sat on the edge of my bed, his eyes thoughtful. "You're tired," he said gently. "So are you," I replied, reaching out. My hand passed through empty air. That was new. He smiled sadly. "You don't need me like this anymore." Tears came fast then. I shook my head, refusing to listen. "Stay," I whispered. "Just a little longer." Raven looked at me the way he used to when I was overworking myself, full of concern and love. "You raised me to be brave," he said. "Now it's your turn." When he disappeared, it wasn't sudden. It was slow, like a sunset you watch even though you know it will end. I cried for hours. Not because I lost him again, but because I finally understood. Love doesn't end with death. It changes. It settles into memories, habits, strength. In the days that followed, I began speaking about him openly. I kept his room intact, but I opened the windows. I learned how to sit with the pain without escaping into visions. Raven didn't come back. But sometimes, when I smile for no reason, I know where it comes from. And that is how a mother learns to live with grief in one hand and love in the other. After Raven stopped appearing, the house didn't feel empty the way people describe emptiness. It felt occupied by something unseen, like a paused breath. I moved carefully, afraid that one wrong movement might disturb whatever remained of him. Mornings were the hardest. I still woke at the same hour, instinctively listening for his footsteps. The silence that followed felt heavier than noise. I would sit on the edge of the bed, hands folded, reminding myself that getting up was an achievement now. I didn't remove his things. Not because I was stuck, but because they carried warmth. His jacket by the door still smelled faintly like the soap he used. His mug stayed on the counter, chipped at the rim. These objects didn't trap me in the past, they anchored me in love. People checked in less as time passed. Life moved on for them. For me, it shifted sideways. I learned to exist alongside loss rather than waiting for it to leave. Sometimes, while washing dishes, I would feel the urge to turn and speak. Not because I saw him, but because my body remembered sharing space with him. I let those moments pass without shame. One evening, as rain tapped softly against the windows, I realized something painful and freeing at the same time. Raven hadn't disappeared because I stopped loving him. He disappeared because my heart was finally strong enough to survive reality without breaking completely. That understanding didn't erase the pain, but it softened it. I wasn't losing him again. I was learning how to live with what he left behind. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, my days began to stretch again. Not with happiness, just with capacity. I could stay outside longer. I could hear laughter without flinching. I could say his name without my chest collapsing inward. One afternoon, I found a voice message on my old phone. Raven's voice. Casual. Playful. He was reminding me to eat and complaining about traffic. I listened twice. Then a third time. I didn't cry immediately. I smiled first. That surprised me. Grief had taught me that love doesn't disappear. It transforms. It settles into memory, into habit, into the quiet courage of waking up and choosing to stay. That night, I spoke to him again, not expecting an answer. "I'm still here," I whispered. "I'm trying." The silence didn't feel cruel anymore. It felt respectful. I began doing small things for myself. Walking in the mornings. Cooking meals I enjoyed. Letting light into rooms that had stayed dim for too long. Healing wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. Private. Sometimes, when the house is especially quiet, I still sense him, Not as an image, not as a voice, but as a presence shaped by love rather than loss. I no longer need my mind to bring him back, because my heart has learned something important. A mother never truly loses her child. She learns to carry him forward. Carrying him forward changed the way I looked at the world. I stopped measuring days by what I had lost and started noticing what still asked for my attention. The garden outside needed tending. The stray cat returned every morning, waiting patiently by the steps. Life, quietly persistent, kept knocking. I began volunteering at a small community kitchen twice a week. At first, it was just to leave the house with purpose. I didn't tell anyone my story. I washed vegetables, served plates, listened more than I spoke. There was comfort in being useful without being needed. One afternoon, a young boy dropped his spoon and looked up at me with familiar eyes. For a brief second, my chest tightened. I steadied myself and smiled, handing him a clean one. The moment passed. I didn't collapse. I didn't escape. I stayed. That was new. I realized grief hadn't made me fragile. It had taught me patience. It had slowed me down enough to see details I once rushed past, the way people carry invisible losses, the way kindness often arrives quietly. At home, I finally opened Raven's room fully. I dusted shelves, folded clothes, kept what mattered. I didn't erase him. I curated him. I chose memories that strengthened me rather than consumed me. That night, I slept deeply. No dreams. No voices. Just rest. When I woke, sunlight filled the room, warm and ordinary. I felt a gentle certainty settle in me. I could love him forever without living only in yesterday. And that felt like progress. On the anniversary of the accident, I went out alone. No rituals. No speeches. Just a walk through the city we once shared. I stopped at his favorite corner cafe, ordered the drink he liked, and sat by the window. I spoke to him in my thoughts, not with desperation, but with gratitude. For the years. For the laughter. For the bond that shaped me into who I was becoming. I didn't wait for signs. I didn't search for him in reflections or sounds. I let him exist where he belonged now, inside me, steady and safe. As I stood to leave, I felt calm. Not healed. Not finished. But whole enough to continue. Back home, I placed a single photo on the shelf, not as a shrine, but as a reminder. Love survives loss. It adapts. It teaches. That evening, as the house settled into quiet, I made dinner for one and ate without guilt. I washed the dishes slowly. I turned off the lights room by room. Before bed, I paused in the doorway of Raven's room and whispered, "Thank you." Not goodbye. Just thank you. And for the first time since the accident, the silence that followed felt kind. It didn't echo. It held me.